of you who I've not met before, my name's Ruby James. I'm the events lead at Virgin Money in Manchester on Market Street, and we're delighted to be sponsoring today's event. Just before we do get started, I'd like to share with you Virgin Money's latest current account bundle offer for new customers. Along with all the great benefits that the M Plus current account already offers, as an extra thank you from us, you'll also receive a free case of Virgin wines that's worth £138, 2.02% interest on your first £1,000, and as an extra thank you, we'll also make a £50 donation to a charity of your choice. They just need to be registered with the Virgin Money Giving platform. So far, that has raised £200,000 for UK charities, which after such a tough year has been really good to see. So we'd just love to build on that total even more. We'll send out all the details about the current account following today's event, but do get in touch if you'd like to find out more directly from me. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's event, so do tag us in any of your social posts. We are at Virgin Money on all platforms. And that is all from me. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Sue to get started.
Oh, thank you, Ruby. And yes, and thank you for the sponsorship today and Pro Manchester for hosting this with us. And so I guess you're all here because you're wondering how best to demonstrate social value in your business tenders. So from our perspective, I guess we very much put this session together emerging from COVID-19 and looking with, and I guess it's sort of a cliche, you know, building back better. But many organisations through COVID-19 and actually, you know, post COVID-19 and looking towards their strategy for the future are, you know, embracing new business models and collaboration across both public and private sector. And we've seen lots of positive actual examples of that during the pandemic, and hopefully more to continue going forward. And I guess the challenge for us all is, you know, how we do that in the most effective way, and how we achieve that better social value for society. In September, interestingly, the momentum, I think from my perspective, was further accelerated for anybody bidding for public contracts. So with the launch of the policy note that came through, taking account of social value in awarding of those central government contracts. So we've gathered together a team of experienced panellists who we're going to discuss. So we're going to discuss between us, and we're going to discuss with you as attendees, and just look at the valuable insights. What does that policy note mean? Look at the valuable insights around it. And also from our perspective, we really want to share some practical guidance on how to demonstrate social value in those competitive tenders for the public sector generally. We're really grateful to everyone who's joined. The last count we had over 100 of you, so thank you for bearing with us while we let everybody in the room, and anybody who won the game of charades, do please let us know. So we've got some slides to take us through the chat today and the forum, which I'm going to attempt to share on screen now, and hopefully that will all work very well. So let me see if this is working, and hopefully one of my colleagues will tell me, yes, it is. By nod, Lorraine, are they up there? Yes, so hopefully we'll be able to see the slides now. And I guess just very quickly introducing the panel so we can get on to what we're going to talk about. So I'm Sue Hutchinson, partner and head of charities at Beaver and Struthers. So Beaver and Struthers, our head office is in Manchester. We have an office in Lancashire. We also have offices in Birmingham and London. And I work nationally with all of my colleagues, with many clients, wide ranges of activities and sizes. And I specialise in the not-for-profit sector, public sector. But we're very passionate at Beaver and Struthers about working and adding value to our clients and the local communities in which we work. And this often means for us demonstrating social value. Of about 50% of our business is working with the public sector. And we are now often more and more asked to demonstrate that social value, but we want to demonstrate it and we do it as a business. So how best to do that in our contracts going forward is something of interest to us. So as well as hosting this panel discussion and driving this and just looking, and I will be looking on the chat for questions from yourselves as well. So do please pop questions on that chat. Then actually, you know, I hope to take something, and my colleagues in the background hope to take something away from this today as well. I'll now ask Christian to introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Sue, for the introduction. My name is Christian Young. I'm a solicitor with a firm called Mills & Reeve, which some of you may have heard of. We have an office in Manchester and London, Cambridge, Norwich, Birmingham, and what have you, and Leeds. My specialism is generally helping public sector bodies deal with procurements and tenders, and also answering queries from those people who have to bid for those contracts. And prior to my working for Mills and Reeve, I worked for a very long time in the NHS and at the Ministry of Defence. So I bring with me a good deal of experience about how the public sector operates and how it views tenders and the approaches to them. And I will be hoping not to talk at you, but to talk with fellow panelists about the concept of social value and the practical issues that arise from trying to include social value in your tenders. Joining me, of course, is Lorraine. So if I hand over to her so she can give you a bit of an introduction herself.
Thank you, Sue and Christian. Hello, everybody. I'm Lorraine Cox. I'm actually the Director of Star Procurement based in Greater Manchester. Some of you will already know us, which is really good. Just for those of you that don't, just to explain who we are. Well, firstly, we are the public sector. I represent at the moment 4 councils and 2 clinical commissioning groups across Greater Manchester in terms of our 6 core partners that basically fund STAR. We also lead on possibly about 75% of the collaborative procurement that happens across councils within Greater Manchester and sometimes for clinical commissioning groups also. And we undertake probably 10, 15, 20 commissions nationally at the moment for multi-partners or single authorities who wish to utilise STAR in terms of a professional procurement service. Social value, it's something that I'm a little bit Blackpool Rock on this subject, or I like to think I am. It's literally the core of myself and my team. We started a rigorous campaign a couple of years ago to really push social value into procurement, which hopefully I'll tell you all about during the course of the next hour. But really our ambition is to make sure social value is in all procurement, certainly above £25,000 values of contracts. We want to make sure that the added value that we gain is contract managed, and equally we want to work with businesses to make sure you understand it, you can do it, you can put it into your tenders, because I think what you're seeing now is quite a mass sort of trot towards more social value featuring in public sector contracts as we move forward and as we get closer to bigger issues like climate change and climate emergency. So really happy to be here. I'm really happy. Please send us lots of questions through the chat, because I want to tell you as much as I can share with you today as possible. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. And I'm just checking with my colleagues who, I've been sharing my screen instead of my slides. Am I now sharing the slides? Yes, and I can now see the chat as well. So I've just had a panic in the background that I couldn't see the chat, but I've now got it because I've read that message. There we go. Righty. So without further ado, what's it all about today? So what are we going to talk through? And we're very much going to talk through. Next slide. Yeah, we're very much going to talk through the law as it stands and what that policy note is. Christian's going to take us through that. We're going to look at what the social value model is. You might have seen in the agenda, there's a question about Wales. What about Wales? What about Wales? Yeah, so Christian will come on to that in a moment. And also linking in with that, the circular economy. And also then moving on to, as colleagues have already said, what is the point of all of this? We've given a little bit of a brief in our introductions, but hopefully we'll get a bit more into that detail and the reality, as Christian said, of looking at what is best practice, especially from Lorraine's perspective and Christian's perspective. What are they seeing as best? What can they give us in terms of those tips and hints for best practice? And actually, just interestingly, what are the benefits as well that from all of this? So without further ado, Christian, I'll move on to yourself. There we go.
Okay, so here we have quite a busy slide, but it's really helpful. because social value is kind of like trying to describe an elephant to somebody who's never seen one before. There's lots of it, and they're all different bits that fit together in the most peculiar way. And we've seen a massive revolution in social value since I've been dealing with it. And if I think back all the way to 2010, when I first started to get involved in procurement, the social value clause in a contract, which was several millions of pounds to deal with clinical waste collection, was that the waste company had to build and maintain a community garden. And we've come along a very long way since then. I don't know what happened to the community garden. Whether or not they actually built it, I don't know. Probably not, actually. But yeah, you can imagine from that there was somewhat of an initial reluctance to think about social value as something which was important to contracts. And it's gathered pace quietly in the background, and we have seen it come to the fore very much due to the PPN, which was issued last year. And, you know, the pandemic has thrown everything into stark relief about, you know, the value of communities and the value of supporting each other. And at the moment, the PPN provides us with the basis upon which procuring authorities will look at the elements of social value in their contracts. Social value is going to be considered part of the quality evaluation. And as you know, contracts now have to be awarded on the basis of the most economically advantageous tender, not just the lowest price. And it's, you know, going to make all the difference, as I know to my cost, having gone back into the private sector and missed out on contracts. If you can pick up those percentage points in an area that gives you 10% of the total award, you're going to stand a lot greater chance of winning those contracts if you can get the social value model down, running and looking good. So what does PPN 6 say? You've probably seen it, you might have heard of it, you might even have read it. Well, that advocates the implementation of the social value model into contracts, and it establishes 4 major themes that have to be implemented, and that is rebuilding after COVID, tackling economic inequalities, promoting equal opportunities, and promoting well-being. And you know, I want to ask Lorraine a question here in terms of, you know, how much has she seen PPN 06 being introduced and adhered to by her clients within the public sector?
Thank you, Christian. I think firstly, the emphasis in PPN 620 is very much for central government, and I think what I'd like to quite boldly say is local government and pockets of local government, I might just clarify, have been motoring with the social value agenda for a number of years now. We obviously had the Social Value Act back in 2012, 2013. The language within that act was about consider, and it was very much focused on services rather than all spend. Now, where we've taken this in STAR, I'll talk about STAR first of all, in Greater Manchester, is we've pushed procurement and social value in procurement for a number of years. But as I mentioned in my introduction, we started a campaign back in 2019, I think it was now. I woke up and thought, you know, today's the day and we really need to push hard in terms of the social value concept of being more embedded into the procurement practice. So in short, what we challenged ourselves was to actually say what weighting should be in, and we moved to putting a 20% weighting for social value and then allowing the commissioner and the procurer to obviously decide what's relevant and proportionate in terms of quality and price. And what we've seen in the last 2 full financial years now since we launched this campaign is that we are on average hitting that 20% weighting in all procurement above £25,000 value of contracts. So I would say pockets of activity nationally are demonstrating at least 10 or 20%, and there are 1 or 2 out there, Manchester City Council being one, that are actually now striving to look at 30% and are also looking at a bespoke weighting, I understand, to actually focus on carbon improvement as well. So it is a campaign that has happened in pockets. What we need is more of the public sector doing similar things, if not the same things, in order that businesses can actually bid and tender and understand the game consistently across the country, which I know you can't at the moment.
Yeah, so I think what it adds force to is the point I was making about how much of the momentum social value has gained in the past few years, and particularly as Lorraine has highlighted, you know, certain aspects of the public sector are paying more attention to it than others. And so you may ask the question, well, what is social value? And I think that that's a very good question, because it will depend upon who you're dealing with and what tender you're bidding for. And value needs some explanation as well. Value isn't just about cost. It's not about getting the cheapest. It's about getting the best value for money that you can for a public contract. And with that in mind, the social value model implements what I think are really, really helpful guides to what you can do to show how you are assisting central government and local government in implementing better policies for a better society within which we live. If you look at the social value model, there are themes that arise from that, which are very closely related to what I talked about in the PPN, which is employment, supporting the community, improving working environment, improving the health of your employees, and supporting business as within the community itself. And they are all translated into the criteria upon which contracts are awarded. So if I look at like a practical example, if you take the point about, say, for instance, employment, obviously that has an impact upon the society within which we live. More people who are employed has a beneficial effect in untold numbers of ways. So how is that going to be implemented in terms of social value in contracts? Well, people are going to be looking at awarding marks for things like placements, internships, offering employment to by way of being unemployed for an extremely long time. Another example might be where you are supporting businesses within the community by increasing collaboration. And I just want to talk about collaboration for very briefly, because collaboration is going to be an extremely important point going forward. It is going to be massively prevalent within policy, whereby local authorities and the health service are going to collaborate with each other to provide services. If we could just go back to the original slide, there we go. Thanks very much. Because, you know, I want to talk around these things and raise also the point about something called TOMs. TOMs are a very important part of the social value model. And I think it's been something which has been implemented by the National Social Value Task Force. And the TOMS stands for Themes, Outcomes and Measurement. and Lorraine will correct me if I'm wrong, there are 5 themes, 20 outcomes, and 48 measures. And these are used, I think, in terms of evaluating the value that can be put on social value in a contract by attributing from that what might be called a proxy value on the issue that you might use as an example in bidding. Now, Lorraine will be able to explain better than I. So if I go back to my example of employment, if you talk about the value or social value of an internship or offering employment to those people who have been unemployed for a very long time, that has a greater social value than not offering those things. Lorraine, can you just try and explain the proxy values better than me stumbling around?
Explain them brilliantly.
I'll give you a Lorraine version and see if it helps. I think, first of all, the TOMs, I would certainly commend all of you to go away and look at the national TOMs, and we will send the link round so you can go on to, I think it's on the Social Value Portal website, but we'll send the link so you can have a look. And basically, I don't know whether it's still 48, Christian, because I know there's a new set of TOMs for 2021, which are about to be launched in May, early May. But they're not changing massively. But if you all go and have a look at that list of 48, 52, however many, it breaks basically what social value is in the public sector context into themes, and it'll go into detail around, carbon initiatives, unemployment, employment, targeted groups, ex-offenders, that sort of thing. So it'll give you a lot of information about what are TOMs. Now, how we actually use those in STAR, so I'll give you the STAR example first, is at the moment, and since we launched this approach 2 years ago, we've issued the list of TOMs with our tender docs to say, please tell us what social value you would like to offer. And what a business will do is basically click on the bits they like and think they can offer. So we do see a lot around apprenticeships. We look at, quite often we receive a lot from businesses around committing to local supply chains. So they're recycling their pounds locally, which is amazing, really good stuff. But what it's not doing for me, it's not focusing directly on corporate priorities for the organisations I work for. So without going into too much detail today, but watch this space because we're going to be working on this in the future, we want to actually start to target and bespoke. So rather than give you the menu and say, tell us what you want to give us, we're going to be saying, actually, there's 15, 20 that are more important. Now, we might either reduce the list on certain tenders, or we may actually weight certain TOMs within there. And then what basically happens is you put your offer in through your method statement, through your tender. In STAR, we actually evaluate that both on quality and, on quality and quantity, where in no central government are looking at it purely from a quality rating, probably a 0 to 4 score based on a method statement. But using the proxy values, what we do in STAR on the quantity, so if somebody's offering 1 apprentice post and somebody's offering 10, obviously their proxy value, the value of an apprentice, will be multiplied by 10. And what we do is we convert the social value offer into cash using the proxy values, which again are in the public arena, so you can have a look at them. And then we score people on what I call the SIPFA model, and certainly was in my day. And we score, basically the person with the highest score gets 100%, and we pro-rata that percentage down. So that's how we score and evaluate both quality and quantity. So look at the TOMS measures and outcomes, and look at the proxy values, and it will start to hopefully make a little bit of sense as to how we use that methodology to score social value.
And Lorraine, am I right in thinking that's through the social value portal? That's where people will find the TOM?
I think the TOMs are on the social value portal. Let me just be clear, the social value portal is a national social enterprise. We actually contract with the value portal as our tool for our procurement and capture and contract management of social value, but there are other suppliers out there who can offer that service to businesses and the public sector. So there's not just the social value portal, there are others, but I know most people are using the national TOMs, which is a methodology to quantify social value. So that is a generic document that people are accessing.
And it is interesting when you talk, and I know, you know, both of you talking about, I guess, the TOMs. I'm an accountant, so I like something. I like measures.
Yes.
I know you work with many of us, and I really do like understanding sort of what it is that we need to do to achieve it, and I guess having some standardization and consistency in terms of how we're bidding. And from my perspective as a bidder, you know, how am I going to measure against someone else? And if we've got a framework that we're all working to, then that feels really good.
I think the challenge, Sue, is not everybody's using the same framework. I think nationally, and I was part of, and still I'm part of, the National Social Value Task Force, which represents both public, private sector and you know, central government, local government association, and various key partners. You know, it's a really, really effective group that has been around for a number of years. There's not enough of us committing, in my opinion, to using the TOMs, and I think that the more that we do, the easier it will be for businesses to have the same experience no matter where they're actually bidding for work. And I think that inconsistency at the moment is a barrier for businesses, because they're applying for, you know, a contract in say Greater Manchester with one council, and they might next week be, you know, applying for something in Birmingham City Council. Not to pick on them, but they may get a very different experience, and I don't think that's good enough for business communities in terms of actually helping it to be simpler for you to actually be able to give us the very best. So that's a learning I think we all need to take. And to be fair, the law at the moment for England and Wales are somewhat different, and I'll prompt Christian here to talk about Wales, but in England at the moment we have the Act from 2012, which is using that lovely word consider, but we're not actually going in there saying you must put social value in all tenders in the public sector, and I believe we should, and I think we will see a move to that over the next 12-18 months, and particularly because the legislation that you know, public contract regulations that we sit under is under review. There's a green paper consultation that's just happened, so there is change definitely around the corner. So this is an agenda that will definitely ramp up in the next 12 to 18 months.
Excellent. And just whilst you're on barriers for I guess businesses, there's just someone on the chat which is at the heart of what I think as well in terms of tendering. Lots of the clients that we work with, you know, find it quite a challenge, especially when they're sort of SMEs, you know, smaller organisations that I guess in terms of quantity, going back to your example, I think of the apprenticeships 1 versus 10, you know, I think the question very much is around, you know, what can the smaller organisations do to increase their chance of winning and getting that, you know, showing and demonstrating that return on investment. And is there, I guess the second part of the question is there more work that can be done to actually, I guess, break tenders up to allow you know, smaller organisations to be involved as well?
So if I respond to both of those points, and the first one in terms of should have written this down, in terms of businesses, I think it was around SMEs and smaller businesses almost being affected and it not being an equal playing field. Well, I will say from my 2 years experience of doing this across Greater Manchester and some national activity as well, is we're actually seeing an increase in SMEs, VCSEs bidding for work, and hopefully we're going to release some new numbers of the last financial year shortly. We're seeing an increase of SMEs, VCSEs winning as well, more importantly. And I know in 1920 of the contracted activity that went through our social value portal in that year, which was about 62 contracts from memory, 57% of those were awarded to GM businesses. So for me, I'm seeing an improvement as a result of all of the campaign that we've started on, and I'm hoping to give you some even better news shortly on the last financial year. The reason I think, I mean, there's a number of reasons why SMEs and VCSEs are bidding, you know, more strongly, but I think what they've got to look at is, rather than thinking, well, we're not, you know, a big multinational organisation here and we haven't got a room full of people writing the tender. But what you tend to find from the SME cohort and voluntary sector cohort is they eat, drink and sleep the doorstep that they work and live in, and they know intimately, far more than I will know as a procurer, what is going on in that community. They will already be doing an enormous amount of social value with their eyes closed. And I think what's really, really important is you will think about how you almost capture what you will already do. I'm doing this exercise with a voluntary organisation in Manchester soon, and we will be publishing this. And I think use the TOMs, look at the TOMs, sit in a darkened room with 1, 2, 3 of you if you can, and actually think, what do we currently do against all of those themes? And it will start to make you realise how much you do. And I think that is why I'm seeing an increase of success and winning bidders coming from the SME and BCSE sector. So I don't think this approach is prohibitive, and I don't think it's excluding SMEs. I think it's doing the opposite, in my opinion.
Excellent. And I guess just another conversation on the chat is around, and I guess it sort of refers back in some ways to what I was mentioning earlier about sort of standardization, because for me, yeah, standardization helps us all. And I know you're saying, you know, there's clearly some way to go with it, but there is reference to more frameworks out there. HACT, you know, we work in social housing, you know, HACT is a framework that's used there and actually, you know, being developed even more. But there are other frameworks out there. And I guess the question here is, you know, it's as you just said, you know, capturing the information, and how many ways do we need to capture the information to be able to satisfy all the different frameworks that are being used to measure it. And I don't know whether either of you have got views on that.
Go on,
sorry, Lorraine, you carry on.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the challenge, is you're working, businesses are working with multi-sectors, so what experience you get in councils is different, unfortunately, from council to council. And then when you say, oh, we're actually doing some, you know, bidding for work in the housing sector, it's, as you say, another set of measures. But I think fundamentally, if you drill back to what the core themes are within those measures, we're all trying to do the same thing. And I think the best way I can describe it is, if you just think where you live, it's all about the people on the street. So let's use Trafford as an example. What Trafford members want, what Trafford's executive want and chief officers want, is improvement for health, well-being, education, employment, and all of the above and beyond for the people in the streets of Trafford. Well, so does Trafford Housing Trust, and so does, you know, Trafford Hospital. So actually all of us within the public sector want the same thing for the same people. So I think what we've got to do is work more collaboratively, multi-partners and cross-partners, to try and not necessarily make one offer, you know, one set of toms for everybody, because there are differences, but to actually try and simplify and work better in order that when bidders are bidding, businesses are bidding, that they're actually getting a similar experience to make it more simplified. But the themes are there, and if you map what you do as an organisation, you will be able to apply those themes to any tender, I believe, that you're actually going after.
That's good advice in terms of how people collect it, and then it'll map across. Yeah.
Sorry, if you know, just to come back on that point as well, I think that SMEs are uniquely designed to be able to show better social value than, you know, the international conglomerates that sometimes dominate the public sector contract arena, because of the very nature of SMEs. They're more locally based, they have more information and intelligence about what to do with local contracts and how to operate. And in terms of the information that might be provided to those who award contracts, you know, throughout the contract you will be asked, probably as a term of that contract, to provide information as to how you are discharging your social value obligations on a regular basis, you know, quarterly or biannually, in terms of, you know, how are you addressing the theme of creating jobs in the local area? How are you addressing the theme of being more environmentally friendly during the term of your contract? You know, and one of the points I've put on this tabular slide here about Wales. What about Wales? Well, I'm quite evangelical about Wales because I think that they are, you know, at the forefront of this in many ways, not only because they have the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which places a statutory obligation on public sector bodies to have a social values statement and to adhere to the outcomes that they have to that are identified by statute. And, you know, way back when I was FAB, when I worked in Wales, we did the Public Health Wales procurement for the refurbishment of their headquarters, where I think 7 offices were going into one, which you might think was something that would have just been hoovered up by whoever it is that does these office furniture things. But they didn't do that. They chose a different way, and it was quite revolutionary at the time and very nerve-wracking for me, because I was the lawyer who was advising him that it was okay to go ahead down this route. And they eventually awarded the contract to Public Health, from Public Health Wales, to a local enterprise who was going to refurbish all of the items that we used in the new office. And I was just looking at it this morning again and marveling at how brilliant it was, actually. Even at European Commission level, it got noticed. And some of the stats are incredible, because of the 2,563 items, no less, that were used in the new office, 45% were reused, 49% were remanufactured. Only 6% of the new items were purchased brand new. And apparently, I don't know how, but they know this, but 41 tonnes of waste were diverted from landfill, and the project saved 134 tonnes of CO2 emissions. And that is obviously based upon projections, which I don't doubt that those people who specialise in this thing would be able to show relatively easily in a tender submission as to how much CO2 they might save by refurbishing, reusing, recycling, or indeed just using local enterprises in terms of their carbon footprint. And when I then dug down deeper into the Public Health Wales tender, I saw that it was a 60-40 split, quality and price. The quality was based mainly around the standard of the items. If I find the actual case study itself, that the award for quality was made up. 40% was overall design, 15% was fitness for purpose, 20% of the overall marking for quality was sustainability. And of that 20%, 50% of those marks was about disposal. And that screams to me to be a local requirement for an SME. And those are the sorts of things about Wales that I can go on about all day and just bang on about how brilliant the Public Health Wales refurbishment was. And it is that sort of thing that public sector bodies will look at and love going forward for a number of reasons. Firstly, it satisfies their statutory obligations. Secondly, it gives the chief exec bragging rights at the meeting of chief execs, or whatever they do, to talk about how much CO2 they have saved in terms of their new tender. Sorry, so were you coming in then, or were you?
No, I was just understanding and listening and agreeing, really. And I guess, yeah, the environment is on the wider agenda, but obviously in Greater Manchester we've got a stronger focus to make us carbon zero a bit sooner than the rest of the country as well, haven't we? And just, I think the Welsh examples are brilliant as you describe them, and they're very practical as well. But I guess I'm just looking at the chat. There's a big theme on the chat about getting down to micro entities, and I guess with, you know, some of the examples we're talking about, they seem larger, and we're talking about SMEs a lot. So I just wonder, Lorraine, is there, I mean, I don't know whether you've been reading the question.
Yes, yeah. Do you want me to jump in there? I mean, yeah. Thank you for many people raising this on the chat, and it's really good, you know, to bring the focus in. It's ridiculous to use the phrase SME, because, like you pointed out in the chat, 0 to 250 employees is you know, a very different organisation, and unfortunately that's just the parameter that nationally is used at the moment. One thing, again, I can assure you, in STAR, is we are actually capturing micro data as well. We're also capturing BAME data, Black and ethnic minority organisations as well, which my board have asked for. So we're starting to look at the data set of who's bidding and who's winning, because first of all, what I need is a benchmark to know what we're not good at, in order that we can put an improvement plan to improve. But to respond to those questions specifically, the campaign in STAR and the way we've taken this, although social value applies to contracts of the value 25k upwards, we use the social value portal for 50k upwards. So any procurement that happens below 25k, firstly, our internal rules within STAR organisations allow us to go out for 3 quotes. So we can actually cherry pick you guys out there and actually go directly to 3 and get 3 quotes and do what I call a quick quote. It's actually called risk-based sourcing if you Google and have a look on our website. So there are ways and means that we're now starting to tackle the smaller. I'm not saying that a micro only wants a small value contract, because you might have the capacity to deliver something much larger. But I think the emphasis for me is looking below the 50k activity to actually say this year, and this is part of our campaign, is actually how do we bring those micros and smaller SMEs into the family? Because although I'm lumping you all together at the moment, I want to actually start to tackle that, because again, there's more added value there. Firstly, you can come through the supply chain. Secondly, we're seeing bidders now starting to commit to supply chain spend, collaborative bids, consortia bids. I'll tell you what's hard for me is to know, and this might sound ridiculous, but to know who is out there, in order that we can lead the horse to water so you can bid, and actually to look at how we broker those relationships between, you know, the micros and the bigger organisations, in order that we can formally, I call it speed dating. How do we match make you in order to bring you together so we can get bidders coming from collaboratives, collective micros and small enterprises? So anybody that wants to work with us and help us with that, particularly in Greater Manchester, we'd be really keen to develop that, because at the moment all I know is who is on the chest. And those of you will know the chest is the portal that we use for procurement. We've got another platform we've started to use. So when you click onto our website, you get a little message to say hello, and we get you to register, and it's called Sharp Spring. So that brings more business intelligence, because for me, I only know you if I know you, and I don't mean that in a corrupt way. I know you because you've probably done business with us before. So we've got a multi-layer of campaign here, working with SMEs, micros, VCSEs, and again, if you've got a group or you know, events like this where you want us to come and talk and work with you, we do a lot of pre-procurement activity now to actually make sure that we engage with people who are likely to bid with us, to actually help you with social value, help you with the chest, help you with the portal, because if you become a better bidder, we get better bids. So actually we've put in a lot of investment within that. So again, if people have got forums, groups, or some methodology that you want to work with us on to actually help us with that, speed dating and helping you to get into the supply chains of the bigger entities, or indeed help you to bid for the expenditure that's perhaps more relevant in terms of value, you know, please contact us and work with us, because we're evolving rapidly, but we haven't forgotten the micros, and it's very important to us.
Yeah, and I think Andy Barrow's already put his business's website on there for you, Lorraine. So you've definitely got another one to be working with going forward. And he was very much looking, as you've just said, about how they can connect with, I think, main contractors as well. So I think if you can be that sort of networking, then that's fantastic, isn't it? So somebody's asking, may I ask you and the panel if B Corp certification has been considered in the government's social procurement process? I think it must be going to you, Lorraine. Or is it going to Pedro?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question again, Sue? I was just writing Andy Barrow's name down just so I can stop.
Right. I think somebody's just wondering if B Corp certification has been considered in the government's social procurement process.
Find the question on the chat.
Yeah, it's further down. Can you see it?
B Corps.
I think it's Kyle and Pedro.
I don't know what B Corps is. Could the
It's an organisation. So if Kyle and Pedro want to even come in and ask the question, explain a little bit more if they want to go off mute.
That would help.
Yeah, hi.
Hi,
Can you hear me? Hi everyone. Thanks for running this today. So yeah, I'm the Partnerships and Product Manager at B Lab UK. So a B Corp is a certification for companies which commit to the idea of business being for good. So companies that want to become a B Corp go through an impact assessment. So they answer a lot of questions in respect of how they work in the social and environmental areas. So it's broken down to how they treat the workers, how they engage with the community, what their governance structures are, and they commit to make a legal change in their articles of association as well to support those ideals. And so I suppose the thinking from Pedro and I on this front is if a company has gone through the impact assessment process and committed to making that change, which is quite rigorous, they've already demonstrated with evidence what they have done to sort of promote social value and environmental value. So I was wondering, is there a kind of, to use this word, synergy between this push towards social value and demonstrating that? And actually, if a company comes and says, we've already gone through this, we've got B Corp status, whether that could be something that influences the decision process as well.
Adrian, that's it's something new, so great. I've learned something today, and I will certainly have a look at that within STAR, and I'll probably make contact with you also. I think to respond to that, some of you will remember 100 years ago, if you're as old as me, when we had construction line, those of you that work in the construction business, and I remember that was almost like a PQQ badge, where if you've got construction line, you're immediately on the short list or the select list, and I think that was used historically because it was like a pre-qualification set of things, you know, around construction and safety and that sort of thing. So I will definitely go away and look at that, and if there were any other examples out there of where there are national standards, because what we will do is we will assess what that means and actually look at whether we can incorporate that in, because if there's any quick pre-qualification badges that can verify your standing and award points through social value, that would be great. So thank you, Adrian, for bringing that to our attention.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And I guess that's, yeah, because I'm thinking as we're talking, it's like we have PQQ questions in tenders that we work with, if that makes sense. So I guess it's part of, you know, what are your policies with procedures? Yeah, is it, you know, if we've got one of those, then yeah, we're already on the journey to being positive in terms of social value. So that's really good to bring out. Fantastic. Okay, so Christian, would you like now to move on to the social value model on the next slide and maybe talk about it a little bit more?
Sure.
There we go.
Okay, so you know, we've already mentioned the social value model at times during the chat we've just had, and as Lorraine alluded to, there is legislation already in place to particularise what that means. For instance, the Public Services Social Value Act 2012, the Wellbeing Future Generation Wales Act, and the Law Reform in Procurement in Scotland, if I've got that one right. I don't do Scottish law, so yeah. But there is now a sea change in terms of getting that into on a legislative basis, and the government have very helpfully distilled that into a number of different documents. One of those appears on the slide there, the social value model, which I was just looking at, because that contains all of the themes that are required to look at social value. It's quite a weighty document, and it's not an easy read, but it does give you some really helpful examples. But I'm conscious that, you know, there are a lot of people here from micro enterprises who won't be able to say, great, well, what we'll do is we'll run a 6-month intern program for disadvantaged youngsters within a 10-mile radius of our branch office in Wythenshawe, because that's just not going to happen. But it does give you some illustrative examples of how you might be able to show what it is that you're doing to support social value and pick up those marks within the 10%. For instance, I think that some of the examples in relation to employment, retraining and returning to work apply equally to any business. For instance, one of the illustrative examples within the social value model document it has there is mentoring, mock interviews, CV advice, careers guidance, and then it goes on to the more meaty stuff of work placements, pre-employment courses. And these are the sorts of things that those people who mark social value in the tender responses that people put in will be looking for to show that those marks can be awarded. And again, what it does is the document provides themes that can be used as the basis for demonstrating what it is that you can do to show that you are providing social value. You know, those themes being the creation of employment, other return to work opportunities, support for people and communities, support for organisations and helping those organisations recover from COVID, support for the physical and mental health of people affected by COVID, and improving workplace conditions. And I think those themes have been designed to be deliberately vague to enable people such as Lorraine to be able to apply those to a whole myriad of contracts. And in Wales, again, the obligation is on the public sector body to produce a statement which is publicised on their websites to show what they are doing to achieve the social value goals that the Welsh Government has set. And there are a number of outcomes which the Wellbeing Future Generations Act has, and it broadly mirrors what the social value model does, namely that, you know, public sector bodies should be globally responsible. They should promote a vibrant culture in Wales, including the Welsh language. It should promote cohesive communities, more equal opportunities, healthier society, a more resilient society, and a more prosperous one as well. So all of those things are all going in the same general direction, I think. And, you know, I hate to use the phrase, you know, if we just apply your common sense to this, what is social value and what the legislation aspires to implement as social value are all pretty common sense things that you would think of would be to, you know, create social cohesion and for us all to live in a better society than we are at the moment. So I'm going to ask Lorraine a question here in terms of how do you think that this is going to go forward in terms of legislation, and what would you like to see implemented by national government on public sector bodies.
Okay. I would certainly like to see some firmer legislation that has a you must rather than you could consider, because I think until we perhaps take more of a stick than a carrot approach, then you're going to get a very uneven experience when you're bidding for a public sector contract. So I think that needs to be multi-sector, public sector. So obviously I'm representing councils today, but we do work with clinical commissioning groups and also housing trusts, and we've done some work in the education sector as well. So it needs to be multi-partner. So all public sector organisations nationally have a you must clause. I think the way that the PPN notice has started at 10% is, suppose it's a starting point, with all due respect. I think we're all probably already on the road to go beyond 10%. If you'd asked me 18 months ago about my 20%, I think I've stood up in a number of places nationally and said, there's no way I'm going to increase from 20% because I think it's relevant and proportionate. Now, my thinking has developed over the last 18 months, and because I've seen the improvement in regional success, because ultimately I wear a number of Greater Manchester hats representing a number of Greater Manchester public sector organisations, then for me, how much of that spend is being retained within Greater Manchester is an absolute performance indicator for my organisation. So that is important to me. Another performance indicator is about us looking at I'm going to say the SME, I'm going to put an M in front of that, micro and SME organisations and VCSE organisations, and actually measuring the impact of our approach. Again, regionally, because it's what happens in Greater Manchester that I'm interested in. So for me, yes, the law will help. Yes, the public contract regulations that are currently under review nationally will help, and some of you will be close to this and will have read this and will have responded to the consultation, because that is actually focusing on how we simplify and start to actually, within the law, target and ring fence our local supply chain. So for me, bring it all on because it's what we need. Remove the shackles that we've had. But equally, I would commend other public sector colleges just to have a go and stop thinking about it and just do it, because that's what we did 2 years ago, and it's absolutely made a massive difference. I want to do so much more.
And I guess is that what everyone's calling out for? I'm here as a listener as much as anything else, really, and it just feels like even through the questioning, we're calling out for a framework that we can all work within, and an infrastructure that, because we're all aiming, as a country, we all want to build back better and do more, but work with our businesses in terms of doing more. And it's that infrastructure, that standard, the consistency, and just, knowing how to get there. So I guess another roadmap, maybe.
I think we do. So I think the challenges with again within the public sector arena, and particularly councils, we have sovereignty. Every council wants to do it its own way in some respects, because they're empowered to make local decisions. We've got devolution in Greater Manchester as well under Andy Burnham. So I think there's a lot of drivers that are enabling us to work locally and differently, but for me that consistency is important. And I think this isn't about Lorraine trying to take over the world. It's about Lorraine sharing her experiences, good, bad and ugly, with others, and equally others sharing their experiences with me in order that we learn as well. And I think that these regional task forces that are starting to be created, and we are looking at setting one up in Greater Manchester. We've got the National Social Value Task Force, which has been highly effective, and I just think it's that collaboration across sectors, both public and private, and looking at micros, voluntary organisations and so on, to actually make sure we all work with the same passion and focus in the same direction, and keep this as simple as we possibly can. I think if central government or local government associations or whoever dictate, it doesn't always work, because people want to adapt and adjust, but ultimately this is about the same people. So if you look in Greater Manchester, all the councils in Greater Manchester, all the housing trusts, NHS, etc., we all want to serve and improve the life chances of the same people. So therefore, why aren't we doing this the same way?
Yeah, and do you feel that in looking on Greater Manchester, because it is part of the campaign, it's part of what Andy Burnham's doing, and I've very much looked in on it, I'm going to say, you know, from a small business
Yes.
perspective, and looked in on, you know, what we do and how we operate, and then actually, you know, what contribution we can make and how we can help other, you know, we have thousands of clients that we work with at Beaver and Struthers. So how do we help support those clients? And when I've been attending sort of networking events, GM events, I have seen this as very much, because it's public and it's national government driven, that actually, I guess, all the sort of private sector organisations around the table in terms of helping the policy and the decision making process. And I guess, so from a personal perspective, you know, and Beaver and Struthers clearly are supporting me on this, and we encourage all of our team. But actually, I'm now getting involved in Greater Manchester Social Value Network, you know, and I've just said, you know, please let me come along and try and bring the thought process from, you know, and I'm looking down the list of names of attendees today who are obviously interested and thinking, oh gosh, can we, you know, how can we get everyone involved in different ways to try and make sure we're all around the table and I guess designing, you know, the right framework for us. But do you think Greater Manchester, because of our manifesto and our agenda and devolution, do you think we're a little bit more ahead of the game than other parts of the country, Lorraine?
I mean, obviously I'm going to say yes, because I'm part of Greater Manchester, but I think we've had the luxury of having a strong collaboration relationship for a number of years, particularly, you know, in the public sector. I think what we need to do now is to strive to make that multi-partner. So we're moving into sort of this anchor approach where we're looking at, you know, as I say, councils, NHS, housing, universities, in terms of the public entities who hold the public person or spending money, that we get some consistency. And you know, if there's a way for me campaigning on this, believe me, I'm going to be at the front of the queue, because I think it's really important. But equally, for me, there's no point me sitting here, you know, dreaming up a great mad idea and leading the way. What I need to understand is, from the business perspective, what you guys need. And you know, very genuinely, our emails will be shared. You're welcome to add me on LinkedIn, but I'm not very good at replying. So if you want me to speak to you, ring me or email me, and I'm sure Christian will offer the same, because you know, please talk to us. I learn from these sessions, and equally, I need you to be honest and tell me how it is, because the only way you learn is by learning and communicating. So for me, you know, informally, you can sometimes, you know, develop things far quicker and far faster. So we've got some great ideas. If you're in a network, if you're in an association or a group, you know, please engage with us, and we'd love to come and work with you. Manchester with devolution, or Greater Manchester with devolution, has definitely got an advantage, because that is driving that health and social care agenda, you know, faster and quicker than anyone in the country because of devolution. So I think for us, we've got that privilege of being ahead of the curve because of that as well. We've got mayoral elections coming up, we've got local elections coming up. Excuse the expression, but some of the deck chairs may change in the region. But again, I always see these as opportunities where there may be a different lead for this agenda, in terms of leaders of councils and chief execs of councils. So I'll be tracking them down and making sure they're in my gang too, this gang I'm going to create. But just, I would say, engage with us and invite us, because that's the only way we can all move this agenda forwards and get the best, for me, for Greater Manchester.
I think you're absolutely right, Lorraine. Also, I think that one of the major hurdles and obstacles here is fear on the part of public authorities in awarding contracts on the basis of, you know, implementing more social value. They don't want to get challenged. And the only way that mindset's going to change is by people like us talking to people like them to say, well, you can do this. Do you realize that? You can rely upon this. You can implement a social value model. You can award a contract to a conglomerate of micro enterprises who are going to be able to provide these services to you. You don't have to go down the route that's been, you know, well traveled and been quite dysfunctional, if I'm frank, over the, you know, however many years.
Yeah,
you're right, Christian. I think fear is still, unfortunately, a sad factor out there. But again, you know, I grab every opportunity to speak and share the STAR journey. In 2 years, we're seeing 25% of the contract value being offered and contracted in social value. So for, again, 1920, forgive me going back a year because we're just working on the numbers for last year, but in 1920 we saw £31.2 million of social value secured through our approach. Now that's 31 million going into the environment of Greater Manchester. Who wouldn't want that? Which council, which housing association or whatever wouldn't want that? That's my first ask when I'm speaking to certainly politicians. The second one for me is about that local spend agenda, and actually how we use all of these opportunities really to push that local spend, local businesses, and particularly the smaller and medium enterprises, voluntary sector enterprises, to actually boost the economy, because we know it works and we know we need more of it. So for me, it's the fear is absolutely right, but the more we can share the gospel really and the learning and reassure people, and I think, going back to the risk of challenge, if you publish the game, use my simple language here, you play the game during your procurement process and you award on the basis of the game and you're completely transparent, then what is the risk here? Yeah. What is the risk? Because for me, it's minimal, and if you keep it simple, focus on, at the moment it has to obviously have a material link to the subject matter of the contract, but actually as the legislation changes with the green paper, I think we're going to see a massive move forwards in this agenda to actually capture that added value even more so.
Yeah, and I think, it is interesting because you talk about the biggest factor being fear, but I also think it's cultural as well. I just think in terms of just changing mindsets, especially I guess in the commercial world that I live in a lot, it's just that mindset change as well, in terms of it does matter, and actually, promoting it, and even if it's not for a contract, from my perspective, it's promoting it as a business is really good in terms of what we're demonstrating in terms of social value as well. So I know we do our own social value report, and we're currently looking at doing and pulling together, a Planet Mark accreditation as well around it. But I guess it goes back to that whole point earlier, which is there's another one I've thrown in terms of something else what organisations are using to actually demonstrate this ourselves. So I guess, just in terms of closing up, I guess, just going to come to both of you in turn, but I guess what are the 3 takeaways that you could give to anyone still listening, and just, in terms of them going away today and hopefully, thinking, I've heard lots of things, but what are the 3 key things that you think you would give as messages to take away? Firstly, Christian.
Okay, I would say that the 3 top tips are: read the social value model, because you will be surprised at how many examples apply to your business. You don't have to be ICI to benefit from this. The second one is engage with whoever it is that you can to try and increase the profile of social value and what you as a local small micro enterprise can offer, and talk to people.
By people
like Lorraine, like me. I'm just happy always to talk to people about the things that they might be putting down in tenders in terms of whether or not they comply with the law, and would be happy to do so. So those are my 3 top tips.
Thank you, Christian. And Lorraine, give you the hardest job coming last.
I was going to say, I'll probably give you 103, but we've only got possibly a few minutes left. I think if I was a business owner now, I would be finding the TOMs, national TOMs, and I would be sitting in that darkened room and saying, what do we do at the moment? What do we currently actually do? Not what could we do, but what do we do? Because you'll actually be very surprised at how effective you are as a community benefit organisation. And if you're not, then think about how you're going to actually do that, because that's what we need you to write in these boxes when you're actually doing your social value part of your bid. So I'd definitely go away and do that. Second thing, just to promote STAR, please look at the website. There are some examples and case studies on there in terms of social value success stories. And I think no matter who you're bidding with, whether it's through STAR or whether it's an individual, other public sector body, get to know them, get to know how they work, get to know how they're approaching social value. If you know you particularly want to trade with, say, Salford or Birmingham or whoever, get to know them. Please get to know us through all the means that we promote, because it's really, really important that you understand how that organisation is dealing with social value, because sadly at the moment we're all doing it a little bit differently. And then that way, if they're doing pre-engagement, which I would certainly advocate they all should be, we have a pre-engagement protocol, because for me it's really important to talk to people before we actually start playing the game of bidding and tendering. So come to those sessions, come to training sessions, work with us, because at the end of the day, if you are a strong bidder, you are match fit, I think is the phrase I use, then I know I'm going to get better bids and therefore better contractors. So, please take this opportunity to help us, to help you.
That's very much, thank you. And I think that is a really good point, isn't it? We reflect on, we know it's not, standardized. We know there are different ways to do it, but the key thing is just to understand the game you're in, and the rules, I guess, of that game. And for all of us, and actually, talking rather than, and even from our perspective, we sort of look at it on a piece of paper and try and work it all out and think, what are we doing? But actually talking to those commissioners would be invaluable. So I think that's some really, really good tips for everyone. So I don't think there's anything else on the chat that we haven't covered. So just want to take this opportunity to thank you both as panelists. I think this is definitely a journey that I was thinking before that we're on, but I think maybe we're still, sorry Lorraine, but for some of us maybe we're still at the start of it. But a journey that we need to connect on a wider scale, I think, in terms of definitely trying to take it forward and making sure that we make the most of it for what it's all about, which is, the people on the street. So thank you so much, and thank you Pro Manchester and Virgin Money, and hand back to Pro Manchester now to close.
I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you. It was an absolutely brilliant session with so many takeaways. We have recorded the session, so we'll be sending that out afterwards along with the slides, all of your details so people can get in touch, and also the links that Lorraine was mentioning before. So thank you to everybody for watching. Thanks to you guys again. It was absolutely amazing, and hopefully we'll see everybody at another webinar soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Nicola.